Hi, in this video, we'll explore the possibilities offered by Exponder, our real-time, responsive, generative MIDI effect that mimics some of the functionality of the latest advances in so-called artificial intelligence, but in a purely musical, non-textual context. To install Exponder, go to your user library, Presets, MIDI Effects, Max MIDI Effect folder, and drop it in there in order for it to be ingested correctly by Live's browser search function. I've added it to my generative collection, so I can type in Ponder to access it. Now, if I drop it on any MIDI track in my set, it will insert it prior to an instrument on that track, where it will listen to MIDI that I play, and then, after a specified duration of time, begin riffing on those MIDI notes that I played in. By default, in global mode, it has inherited the Aeolian C minor scale that is currently set on Global Hub. For more information on Global Hub, check the video linked below in the comments. Global Hub, of course, comes in the utility boost that is bundled free with Exponder. Before we dive into playing with Exponder, on the left we have our note ingestion and playback settings. In the middle we have our timing and expression settings, and on the right we have our pitch and scale output settings. So in order for Exponder to receive MIDI notes, it must be receiving clock. So I'll begin playback on this short drum rack clip. And now, by default, it is in listen mode. Before going further, it might be fun to toggle that listen mode with a key on my keyboard. I've assigned it to the R key. So now I can toggle out of listen and into playback with the touch of a button. Now, it's not playing anything back because I've not yet played any notes into it. So I've got my push here, and I'll just play some notes. And now that I've toggled out of listen mode, it's playing strictly those notes back according to the settings here. And for avoidance of doubt, I can open the viewer, which will show the notes in yellow that it's spitting out, and the notes in blue as I played them in. So as I toggle back into listen mode, and now it's playing those notes strictly that I just played in. Now, this is all in short-term memory mode, and I can toggle into a long-term memory, in which case it will allow adding notes successively to its data bank, giving it more and more possibilities to play back from, including chords. In order for those to be ingested, I must go back to record mode. And so it's retained those original notes, but now it's playing those chords as well. Now these are all being played back at the rate specified here, which I can switch to any bass metrical setting. I think I'll go back to 16th notes. And we have a density control. At 100%, nearly every single instance of the rate specified above will play. At 0%, there will be no MIDI output. And if I bring it somewhere in the middle, we can make the output a little more sparse, right? Somewhere lower density, we're gonna have less notes. Higher density, like the default of 75, it's fairly busy, but not completely full. Below that, we have the autonomy dial. And this increases the chance that notes outside of what I actually played into it might be played. I'm giving the device some autonomy to explore other note lengths, velocities, and note pitches, because those are all recorded in note pitch, velocity, and length. So now with almost full autonomy, it's really exploring some other alternatives beyond the notes that I strictly played in. And now we're back to just the chords I played and the notes I played. I can also pause playback at any point without clearing the data bank or beginning recording with this play pause toggle here. I'll go back to short-term mode, which clears the memory. Long-term mode allows you to add successive notes to the data bank to expand the range of possibilities from which Exponder can choose. So now it's playing all those chords back, far better than I played them in, to be honest. But now, if I enable recording again and add some lower notes, it's remembering those chords, but also playing the lower notes occasionally. Now we can also add swing at any of the available swing timings here and induce some humanity to make the timing a bit sloppier, which might be even more evident if I disable the swing. And the timing is a bit off. We can also syncopate, which you'll also perhaps hear better at a higher density. And now it's only playing the offbeat notes at whatever the current rate is. As opposed to every available possible note. The velocity and length are multipliers of the note lengths that are output by Exponder. So it may depend on the sustain behavior and voice mode of the device you're using. So now the notes are that much shorter, and the velocity can similarly be exaggerated at higher values. At 200%, effectively doubling the input velocity. Or minimizing it by reducing the values. As with any parameter in Exponder, we can simply double-click to reset it. Now, it can be useful to transpose the output in real time to make it more expressive. Now, this can, of course, be assigned to a MIDI control for real-time transposition. But it can also be helpful to have the response in a completely different octave range. For example, if you want to play notes and have them respond higher, you can bring the octave higher. Or if you want to play notes in the mid-range and have it respond as a baseline, in that case, perhaps you might wish to drop the octave down. Everything will be constrained to the scale and key set here, pinned locally or inherited from Global Hub as mentioned earlier. And the input can be merged, so as it's playing, I can play additional notes over top, or I can have it soloed so that as I play notes in, we do not hear them. We can also eliminate chords by setting it to one of the 3 mono modes here. Last note, lowest note, or highest note. Now, so far, we've only looked at the manual punch in and punch out mode, but some of the more fun modes are perhaps the fixed and the listen mode. Fixed mode gives you an interval in bars at which you can record in new notes. Now, because it's in long mode, it's still got notes in its database to spit out during its turn of the interval. So I'm going to increase the interval to 2 bars and set it to short. And now I played a bunch of notes in, but in solo mode, we didn't hear them. So I'll set it back to merge mode. So, as you can hear with my tremendously embarrassing playing, it will trade bars in this way at whatever interval you specify here. So we can do longer or shorter intervals, but I'll go back to 1 just for a taste. And perhaps it's more evident with the viewer with the yellow and the blue. And remember, it's dropped down an octave, or 2 octaves rather. And finally, we can use the listen mode. And this is going to wait for a certain duration of silence specified here, after which I've stopped playing, at which point it will simply begin playing those notes back to me. So I can play for as long as I want without counting, without punching in manually, and then just wait for my response. And as soon as I begin playing notes in, it will start the recording process again. It will start capturing. Now I can also switch to a more fluid-based randomization mode. It just gives a slightly different character in terms of the note output choice, as well as the randomizations induced by the autonomy dial. Now I'm going to set it to long-term memory while I'm in the listen mode. So it will concatenatively add So we've looked at most of the modes and features built into Exponder, but it might be nice to send the responses to a different instrument. So I'm going to be playing drift, but the response will be coming from the ePiano Mark II. So there are a variety of ways to do this using X Relay and many other devices. But I think what I'll do is simply drag Exponder over to the electronic piano. And I want it to respond a bit higher. And I think, yeah, let's do the listen mode for now. And what's important is that it's receiving MIDI in from our drift track. And if okay, and I want it in solo mode. So I want the monitor to be set to in, but I want the exponder to be set to solo in this case. So I'm going to set this to long mode so it can absorb more notes, and I'll play the drift at a lower octave. For more on X Relay, check our video linked in the comments below. Now, it might be fun to just trade bars here, and there's a variety of configurations I could set up for that with other Manifest audio devices, but I think I'll set it to the fixed interval. Set it back to short so it's more of a clear response. Of course, we can capture the output of any of these as MIDI or audio. But the last thing I want to explore is using X-Translate as a source for MIDI. So I must enable the correct microphone input, and I'll mute it here and make sure X-Translate is receiving. And you can check more info on X-Translate in the video linked below. But now it's sending these MIDI notes as output in the C Aeolian scale. And in this case, I'll now set it to receive MIDI from that audio track. Hello. Yes, and now it's getting MIDI from my voice. And it's responding to my voice as MIDI notes. Now, I can also set drift to receive the MIDI from X-Translate, and now it's going to get some rather odd notes there as it's unquantized. And now it's a little bit more, sensible, you could say. And we're still getting the ePiano Mark II in between as it listens and waits. Now I can adjust the waiting period to be slightly longer or bring it down to a minimum of 200, I believe. So it's captured all those notes that were coming in from the drift that was triggered by the X-Translate. And so we can set up all kinds of wild, interactive, real-time, responsive situations here. But the idea, as I set up to record the output from the piano mini here, the idea is that, all of these chat-based GPT AI tools are very fun and interesting to play around with for creative or other purposes. Perhaps they raise a number of issues at the same time. However, it's my experience and strong opinion that embodied musical performance is inherently different to, if not diametrically opposed to, the phenomenon of text-based thinking, right? So when you're sitting down in the studio, you want to play music. You don't want to think of words to type into a prompt. So Exponder, as it respawns and expands upon and expounds upon your MIDI note input, can be thought of a real-time generative prompt response in this purely musical context, made possible by Max for Live. And so, now it's really just going for it. 30-second note rate, low density. High velocity, bit of autonomy. And there you have it. Exponder, an incredible real-time, interactive, generative, responsive MIDI performance tool. A generative performance transformer, if you will. It can, of course, be captured as MIDI or audio, depending on your needs and wishes. So for more information on Exponder and our other devices, please visit manifest.audio.